The Day After Signal is a podcast about staying grounded when the crisis hits. It was built for moments like this, when reality shifts, when truth feels engineered, when chaos drowns out clarity. In those moments, you don't need certainty, you need a framework. This show builds one, a critical thought learning frame to keep you anchored, clear, and intentional, even when reality fractures. We live in a framed world, not just shaped by facts, but how those facts are delivered. Every headline you read, every press release, viral tweet, and documentary voiceover, even the silences, the stories that never surface, are all shaped by someone's frame, their priorities, their angle, their agenda. That doesn't always mean it's sinister. Framing is how we make sense of complexity. We highlight what matters, omit what doesn't, and arrange information into meaningful chunks. That's framing. And we see it like this. The frame decides whether a protest is called chaos or courageous, whether an AI tool is job stealing or productivity enhancing, whether a new healthcare platform is revolutionary or a regulatory nightmare. And here's the kicker. Even neutrality is a frame. Even silence has an agenda. So the question isn't, are you being influenced? You are. We all are. The question is, who built the frame you're looking through, and what do they want you to see? Let me give you a framework that could save your life. In November 2024, a 33-year-old radiologist went on a solo hike in Oregon's Mount Hood National Forest. He was experienced, skilled, and a father of 4. He called his wife around 10:30 that morning and said he was on track to be home at dinner time, but he never made it back. Rescue teams searched the forest for 2 days. When they found him, he had succumbed to exposure, not far from the Hidden Lake Trail where he started. He wasn't injured, he wasn't lost for long, but he kept moving, trying to descend a dangerous section instead of reassessing his situation. That instinct to push forward, to just figure it out, is what kills even seasoned hikers. Search and rescue teams have a framework that could have saved his life, a 4-step mindset called STOP, which stands for stop, think, observe, and plan. It's taught by the U.S. Forest Service and placed in wilderness guides around the world since the early 2000s. The moment you realize you're off track, you stop. You don't try to brute force your way out. You take a breath. You take in your surroundings and make a plan. That simple act of reframing the moment, from switching from reaction to reflection, can mean the difference between life and death. And here's the thing, that doesn't just apply to wilderness survival. It applies to your mind, your media diet, in moments of panic and in moments when the truth feels like it's bending. If you don't have a framework for those moments, someone else will hand you one. In this morbid example, one frame was, I can push through because I'm strong, which is competing with the STOP framework. The same applies to you. So what exactly is a framework? A framework is a mental lens. It's a scaffolding you use to make decisions, assign meaning, or navigate complexity. You use frameworks every day, whether you know it or not. And more importantly, so does everyone trying to influence you. Let me show you how it works. Example 1, climate change. The environmental frame. Climate crisis threatens ecosystems and human survival. The economic frame. Climate regulations could cost industries billions. Same data, different emotional trajectory. One evokes urgency and responsibility. The other invokes fear and financial resistance. Example 2, tax cuts. Pro-business frame. Tax cuts spur growth and investment. Social justice frame. Tax cuts benefit corporations while hurting working families. Again, same event, different villain, different hero. Example 3, COVID-19 vaccinations. Positive frame. 80% of the population vaccinated successfully. Negative frame. 20% remain unvaccinated despite massive efforts. Mathematically identical, psychologically opposite. Example 4, consumer labels. A chocolate bar labeled 90% sugar-free feels healthier than one labeled 10% sugar. Same substance, different frame. This is framing in action. And at a societal level, there's more powerful frameworks at play. One you need to understand if you want to think clearly about national crisis, alien contact, political shifts, or even how you understand yourself. It's called the Overton window. The Overton window, where ideas go to become acceptable. Have you ever wondered why some political ideas feel impossible one year, and then suddenly they're part of everyday conversation? Well, that's the Overton window at work. It's a concept from political theory that explains which ideas the public considers acceptable at any given moment. Politicians and the institutions behind them typically operate within this window because staying within its frame keeps them electable, relevant, and influential. The term comes from Joseph B. Overton, an American political scientist who helped popularize it. He saw political perception as the real power broker, not necessarily what's true or just, but what people will actually tolerate, support, or consider realistic. Now that's where it gets interesting. The window shifts, it's not nailed to the wall. Movements, media narratives, and cultural shifts, even bold advocates willing to speak up, can nudge that frame in one direction or another. So ideas that once felt extreme, universal basic income, universal health care, abolishing student debt, can slide into the mainstream. Meanwhile, some things that were once standard might drift outside the window over time. It's a dynamic force, not just a metaphor. And if you pay close attention, you'll see the window moving all the time. One opinion piece, protest, or viral video at a time. More on that in just a moment. To recap, the Overton window describes the range of ideas that society currently finds acceptable. Not what's true, not what's legal, just what's discussable, what's normal. It moves slowly, nudged by media, movements, and narrative seeding. Ideas that once seemed unthinkable gradually become radical, then acceptable, then popular, until they become policy, like same-sex marriage or marijuana legalization. None of these started in the acceptable zone. When I say government's disclosure of UFOs becoming more acceptable, I'm saying the topic has been framed carefully until the public is ready. Here's what is really happening. You're being prepped, slowly, steadily, and very deliberately for a new reality. The question is, when the frame arrives, will you accept it blindly, or will you already have a framework of your own? That's what I want you to consider. That's what we're building in this series. Let me get personal for a minute. For me, the framing around extraterrestrial life didn't begin with recent government disclosure, pundits, or YouTube videos. It began in 1977 when I was 9 years old. That's when I remember seeing In Search Of, hosted by Leonard Nimoy. He had a serious, hypnotic way of presenting things. UFOs, ancient astronauts, Atlantis. Even though it aired on regular TV, it felt like forbidden knowledge. It felt like I knew something others didn't. Then came Project Blue Book on NBC in 1978, based on real U.S. Air Force investigations. A year later, Rod Serling narrated UFOs It Has Begun, a documentary that didn't just dramatize sightings, it hinted to a global cover-up. Around the same time, books like The Roswell Incident and UFOs Past, Present, and Future were quickly making their way onto shelves in the library or at drugstore racks next to Omni or Fate magazine. Because I liked it, I felt like I was surrounded by it. But it didn't feel like indoctrination. It felt like wonder. I remember trying to talk to my grandparents, who I lived with, about UFOs after reading something or seeing a documentary rerun. And I still remember their reaction. Total disbelief, mild concern, and then dismissal. To them, any talk of flying saucers was probably just Cold War paranoia, Russian tech, disinformation. They weren't hostile, they just shut it down. That skepticism struck with me. But so did something else. A few years later, our neighbor, an upright guy, working early in the morning, swore he saw something, a UFO, hovering silently while he was on his route in southern Idaho. And I believed him. I don't remember if our family talked about it at length, but I do remember the feeling that this story wasn't safe to talk about publicly, that sharing it meant risking ridicule. That's how framing works. You absorb it before you know you're absorbing anything. And so that sighting went only into my memory, and I have no idea how it affected that scorned neighbor. Fast forward to now, disclosure is no longer fringe. It's moving quietly into the acceptable zone. And not because the facts changed, because the frame did. You're not being prepared for disclosure in the form of a spaceship landing on the White House lawn. You're being slowly acclimated to the idea through a drip campaign of declassified footage, government task force, and cautious admissions. Former officials drop phrases like non-human biologicals. Congress holds hearings with intelligence officers. Pilots testify. Satellite data leaks. And suddenly, "we are not alone" is no longer unthinkable. It's trending. The real insight is this. When the big moment comes, when the truth finally drops, the message won't be, "we just found out." It will be, "we've known, and here's the safe story to believe." They just won't give you the facts. They'll give you a frame crafted by PR teams, national security advisors, and predictive behavioral models. A story so powerful, so palatable, so reasonably framed, you won't stop to ask, is this true or is this engineered? This is the Overton window in motion. Once the idea that UFOs were real was laughable, then it was fringe. Now it's unexplained aerial phenomena, the language of bureaucracy and plausible deniability. What used to be labeled unthinkable has become acceptable, and what's acceptable can be made policy, and policy becomes enforceable by law, but only if the narrative stays intact. So the real question isn't, is disclosure coming? It's already here, just in slow motion. The question is, will you meet it with the framework you choose, or with the one they've already prepared for you? You've been trained for this moment longer than you realize, not by aliens, by editors, producers, language, timing, and repetition. The frame was built before the truth arrived, and so when it does, you'll already know how to feel. In the next segment, we'll break down how to spot these frameworks in real time, and what it takes to build your own, because disclosure isn't just about information, it's about interpretation. And if you want to stand firm, you're going to need a better lens. How to see clearly when the narrative is engineered. That's where the critical thought learning frame comes in. You've used frameworks your whole life, even if you didn't call them that. But here are some examples. The golden rule, the scientific method, what would Jesus do? SMART goals, KISS, or keep it simple, stupid, or SWOT, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which is used in business tactics. These are all pre-built lenses, guides for how to think, how to act, how to make sense of uncertainty and complexity. But the learning frame I want to teach you in this series is different. It's not a belief system. It doesn't tell you what to believe. It helps you ask better questions when belief is under attack. A way to respond, not react. Because here's what's coming. Disclosure is not just about revealing that aliens exist. It's about controlling how you interpret that fact. Yes, the Overton window is shifting, moving us from UFOs are conspiracy to non-human biologicals might exist, to contact has been ongoing, and it's time we join the galactic conversation. But that's only one layer. They're not just softening you to the idea, they're sculpting your response. And here's the deeper threat. If disclosure comes with a new origin story, that humans were genetically engineered by them, that Earth's religions are outdated myths, that we should now submit to galactic wisdom, then millions of people will experience a spiritual collapse, a crisis of meaning, a loss of divine identity. But here's the counterframe. The one I want you to remember when the press conference comes, or when the craft appears in the sky, or when your friend starts quoting the official galactic truth. We don't need to abandon our beliefs to integrate new information. What disclosure may bring is their version of truth, an alien civilization's interpretation, not absolute reality. Just like Earth's cultures and governments have competing agendas, so will they. And just like no human can claim perfect knowledge of God, neither can they. So let me offer you a better framework, a counter-weapon for the engineered story, a resilient lens for what comes next. The influence counter-learning frame. Number 1, moral absolutism. Truth doesn't come from whoever has the biggest ship or the fastest tech. Power doesn't equal moral authority. Number 2, pluralism. If Earth has 1,000 religions and 10,000 worldviews, the galaxy will too. Truth is wrestled with, even among the stars. Number 3, epistic humility. Advanced doesn't mean omniscient. They can be wrong, misguided, biased, just like us. Number 4, faith resilience. Faith is not fragile. It has survived science, war, and empires. It will survive disclosure. God's story is bigger than the solar system. Here's the heart of what this segment is really about. Even if we learn we are engineered, we are still created. A God big enough to create the universe is also big enough to work through whatever life exists beyond it. Even if our myths are challenged, they still carry meaning. Even if they offer cosmic truth, we can still say, let me think about it. Let me test the frame. Because frameworks aren't just tools, they're shields, they're compasses. They are survival kits for a world that's about to tilt. And that's what the Day After Signal podcast is about. Not fear, not belief, but orientation. Because when the frame changes and the story gets rewritten in real time, you'll need a way to stay grounded. That's what we will build in this series. Here's your question for this week. What's the last big worldview change you went through? Was it a crisis, a betrayal, a revelation? Did it leave you shaken, or did you find a new kind of clarity on the other side? If you've got a framework that helped you, share it with someone. If you don't, stick with me. This series is about learning how to build one that can survive what's coming, because something is coming, and you deserve to meet it with your mind, your soul, and your integrity fully intact. The next episode will start with the first part of the critical learning frame. Anchor. What holds you when the world shifts underneath you? How do you know who you are when everything else is up for negotiation? We'll talk about crises and how building your anchor now might save your identity or your soul later.